All right, guys. So today we're going to be talking about Tesla adopting FASB, their earnings report, their Q4 2024 earnings report they just reported, and how basically they only beat their estimates because they held Bitcoin. And I'm going to share a little document here that I created. It shows that their Q4 earnings was 1.6 billion, and zero point 0.6 billion or 600 million of that was just a profit from the Bitcoin holdings they have, which accounted for 26% of their profits. And they would have missed, if they hadn't had that, they would have missed by 25%. So just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that. I mean, there's implications to what this means for other companies adopting it, right? Like MicroStrategy holds, we can see here they hold an estimate of 11,509 Bitcoin. What does MicroStrategy hold right now? 461,000 roughly. Like
I think it's
crazy.
45 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That like their MicroStrategy is basically going to be just writing up their balance sheet based on Bitcoin, and that's the main thing. Do you guys know if their business makes a profit?
It sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. So they do have cash flows from it, but year's end with taxes, all this kind of stuff. Last year it didn't make a profit, but previous years it has. So it just depends on a couple different things. So yeah, it really is like investment income is where their profits are going to be coming from. Another little thing here I did as well is they paper hand a lot of their Bitcoin when they first bought. Tesla, when they first bought Bitcoin in 2021, they bought 42,000 Bitcoin. So if they had just held that, right? Like this is a lesson of never selling your Bitcoin. Imagine what their profit would have been for Q4. And I actually did imagine it. Their profit just from their Bitcoin alone would be 2.19 billion. It would have been more than this car company made being a car company. How wild is that? Like just by holding Bitcoin alone.
That's insane. And I think we should kind of maybe stop and explain why this is happening right now. Did you say it was 600 million they made, Forrest?
Yes.
Yeah, that's nuts. So like maybe we should walk through how that happened in terms of the FASB and the changes and how that all came to be. Do you guys want to take a stab at it, or do you want me to?
Yeah, let's go. You go into it first.
Okay. So basically with the new FASB changes that happened, I think at the went into effect this year for 2025, I believe. So basically up until now, a lot of this Bitcoin, as Forrest mentioned there, had been on the books for a while. That's old Bitcoin from a couple years ago. And so essentially up until December 31st, 2024, these companies who are holding Bitcoin like Tesla, like MicroStrategy, like Block, all these public companies, because of the accounting rules, they had to be, it was very detrimental in how they could report it essentially, because let's say that Tesla bought it at $50,000. And then it went up to $60,000 and then up to $70,000, which actually played out back in 2021. And so in that situation, they actually couldn't mark it up. They had to mark it at their cost base, which was $50,000. But the bad thing about that is that what followed there in 2022 is it went down and down and down to about $15,000. And so because of those accounting standards, they actually had to mark it down to 15,000, which is where it has been basically measured on their balance sheet for the last 3 years now. And so with these new rules now, they're able to not only just mark it up to its cost base, but mark it up to what it's worth in terms of $105,000 US. So that's kind of the accounting here. And this is what MicroStrategy is going to see happen. I think their quarterly earnings report is in 5 days from now on the 5th. So I'm very excited to see. I don't know do you guys have any predictions in terms of what that would be for MicroStrategy? Because it's 45x of what Tesla would be. So Tesla made 600 million off of this. I think that 30 billion would kind of be the starting point, but I think that actually Tesla's is older Bitcoin, so it would have been marked down much lower than MicroStrategy because they've been buying pretty much all the way up, right? This Tesla Bitcoin is a little bit older, so it would have been marked at a much lower cost.
It actually gets marked when they adopt FASB. So Tesla adopted it voluntarily sooner than MicroStrategy did. So it's now mandatory. that companies do. So I think the price appreciation would have actually been higher for the Bitcoin that Tesla had.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because of when they adopted FASB, because it doesn't retroactively, it actually goes on retained earnings for all of the profits that they've seen from the Bitcoin up until the moment they've adopted it. So just like quick head math, I think probably around $20 billion is what we're going to see from MicroStrategy.
Wow.
But this is all dependent, like they're still buying Bitcoin every week. Bitcoin is still fluctuating, right? We still have 5 days. Like, there's still some numbers up in the air. So yeah, just real quick math, I would say around $20 billion in profit is what we're going to see.
Do you guys think that this is going to be a problem when, if we have a bear market, if that even happens? Like, let's say, for example, Bitcoin's price drops 50, 60%. I feel like that could be pretty scary for investors.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're going to have to mark it down, right? Like what Joris said is prior to the FASB adoption, for these companies, it was an indefinite intangible. So you could only mark it down. Now it's priced at its fair market. So, if there's a quarter where Bitcoin goes down, they're going to have to realize that on their income statement. So that's going to reflect in earnings going down. So yeah, they would have negative earnings. But I think what's probably likely going to happen is this first announcement is going to catch a lot of people, a lot of algos, a lot of traders off guard. And then people are just going to kind of realize, okay, we can kind of track from last quarter. They've held this much Bitcoin. Like it's going to be, they're because it's all based on estimates, right? Like, okay, Bitcoin's gone down. We can estimate what their earnings are going to be. And then it's really like if they surprise on either end, then there's a shock to the market and it creates a downward or upward price change. So yeah, I mean, like, yeah, there's going to be negative earnings if Bitcoin has a drawdown. It's going to affect the stock price, right? And again, yeah, these companies, well, especially MicroStrategy, is a play of Bitcoin. So you have to believe in Bitcoin. You have to want exposure to Bitcoin to gain or to buy MicroStrategy, basically.
You can technically just look at their buys and calculate it, though. No, like I'm
Yeah.
sure that you can get an exact number, even based on whatever algorithms are thinking or looking for.
Yeah, a lot of people do. A lot of people, but it takes a little bit of like accounting knowledge and financial statement, know-how. Like you got to be
Yeah.
forensic accountant in that way, where it becomes a lot more obvious. Like I don't know, I've told my friends about MicroStrategy. They pull it up on TradingView. They see negative earnings for the past, however many quarters. They think, I'm not going to buy that. I'm buying Berkshire Hathaway. I'm buying Apple. Look at their earnings. I'm buying Microsoft. Value investor type mindset. They just see negative earnings. They think it's a company that's failing. So I think it is going to just mentally make a switch as well for people to see this positive earnings into the future.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that there's a couple things at play here. So the new FASB accounting changes obviously is going to be a huge boost for MicroStrategy. Like even if it's 10 billion, never mind 20, but like or 1 billion, like that's a significant amount of money that we're talking about here. So that's one. Plus they just came out with their preferred share strike. I think I saw Forrest had a couple of videos on this, which they were oversubscribed to, which means there was more demand than the shares available. Plus, Saylor himself has been kind of utilizing the ATM, the at-the-market purchases in terms of issuing shares to buy Bitcoin. He's pretty much tapped out on that. And that's what's been causing a lot of the downwards movement in terms of price is because he's dumping these shares onto the market to buy more Bitcoin. So I think we're kind of heading into a perfect storm here with those three things in MicroStrategy. What do you guys think about this longer term? Like let's look MicroStrategy end of 2025 and then end of like 2030. How do you guys think about this trade on your own? Just the equity portion.
On the which portion? Sorry,
just like the normal equity share of MicroStrategy, MSTR.
I think it's going to do great. I think most people just don't understand it. Right?
Yeah.
Most people just don't see where it's going because I still get a lot of questions about people saying that why are they dumping their shares? Like if you go on that that subreddit, what's it called?
Irresponsibly long
MicroStrategy. People are still worried. They're thinking, oh, why is he selling Bitcoin? Why is he selling Bitcoin? Most people just don't have the time horizon. They just don't want to wait.
Yeah. Well, the market is made of people with different time horizons, and it's made of people that think MicroStrategy is a Ponzi scheme, right? Like the argument of the Ponzi scheme is coming back. It's making a comeback. And I'm glad that it is because Volatility is the product that MicroStrategy sells. Their convertible bonds, they can get a 0% rate on their convertible bonds because of the built-in call option to the bond. And that call option has that value because of the volatility of the underlying equity. Same with these preferreds. They're a perpetual preferred stock, which means they can convert into common stock at a 1-to-10 ratio. But there needs to be sort of the underlying needs to make sense. The equity needs to be higher than the preferred for that to happen. So likely they won't get converted. But anyway, that is part of the value.
Forrest, can you just maybe explain that a little bit more in depth in terms of like the 1-to-10 ratio? Like, what does that mean for somebody who might not be as familiar with it?
Sure. So you would have to own 10 preferred shares to convert into one underlying common share. So these preferred shares, they are actually selling at $80 each. So if you had 10 of them, that would be $800. So you would want the underlying equity to be over $800 for it to make sense to convert, right? But the thing is these preferreds are also traded on the secondary market. So you get 10% per year because they're paying out $8 annually. So that's the dividend that's paying out. If interest rates come down and if bondholders are getting less for holding corporate bonds or treasury bonds, then other types of income investments become more attractive. And that yield, although the $8 stays the same, but the percentage will actually decrease because the price of the preferred share is going to increase. So those two things are inverse to each other. So when the share price of the preferred stock goes up, then you're looking at that conversion price. Say if it goes to $100, now if you want to convert, you need 10 of those, and the underlying equity MicroStrategy needs to be above $1,000 now instead of $800. So as the preferred is going to move on its own. It's going to change. It's affected by interest rates, as I said, demand for this. If there's a lot of people wanting income, all of that's going to affect the share price of this preferred stock. And then the underlying has to be high enough that it makes sense to convert for these holders. It's a very interesting situation we have here with these preferreds with MicroStrategy.
Is it ever? And I think that as a whole here between Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, I think between the things we talked about already, the preferred, we don't have to get into it again. But the other thing I'm really excited about here in terms of Bitcoin and MicroStrategy is that we're starting to see this AI technology thing really make some companies not as attractive as we thought it was. And I'm thinking about like NVIDIA, where there's a lot of people who own NVIDIA without even knowing that they own NVIDIA through these different index funds and S&P. And then Apple would be another one too. But then Tether as well, who just announced that USDT is going to be compatible with Bitcoin now on the Lightning Network. And so the reason I say Tether is because they're a company who made $10 billion in profit in a year with a very small amount of employees. So between all this technical innovation, it's really making things fall. The prices of everything fall. As technology improves, technology gets cheaper and cheaper. And so all of these have a big premium on them. If we're talking about Apple, if we're talking about NVIDIA, all of these, and then we get a little bit further into like Visa, MasterCard, all of these are at a big premium because that was kind of the only place for capital to go to, the ones who wanted the equity side of things. So I just see that a lot of that capital is going to start flowing into these things like Bitcoin that isn't really affected by the advancement in technology. In fact, it's more of like a bullish case for it by holding Bitcoin. So it's exciting.
I was looking at for Apple, as you just mentioned Apple. I was looking at some stats for them. So their Q1 revenue is 124.3 billion. Their Q1 revenue in 2022 was 123.9 billion. So it's barely gone up, 0.3% growth.
Yeah.
And inflation, think about how high inflation's been in that time.
Yeah, it's negative growth based on inflation. I mean, they need Bitcoin more than they realize, I think.
I think that's the thing that most people don't see. Any company, any business, anything can be disrupted, but Bitcoin can't.
Yeah.
Like you can, there's probably going to be some company that comes out that makes a better Tesla or a better car. There's going to be a company that comes out with that makes a better phone. There's going to be a company that comes out that makes better computers, better chips. We're probably going to go to a different kind of area of how we think of money and how we think about technology, right? Where we're going to keep advancing.
Yeah.
And that's just going to make things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Like with DeepSeek, for example, with NVIDIA dropping so
Exactly.
much, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to make things easier and easier to make. We're going to have more and more abundance. We're going to see the number. So I think this is something that a lot of people ask me about. Why would Bitcoin's price keep going up if we keep getting more and more abundance? Because that Bitcoin can be used to pay for more and more things. As the economy for people who want to accept Bitcoin for goods and services increases, the price of Bitcoin increases because you can buy more things for the same amount of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, the money is just increasing as well, right? Like the money, like Nvidia, I mean, Apple, the stock prices increased even though their earnings have stayed relatively flat. And it's because there's just more money. And like people are treating Apple stock as just like not a growth instrument anymore, but just as a savings account,
Mhm.
right? And this goes into so many other things. We're treating so many things we shouldn't as savings accounts. Whereas Bitcoin is perfect savings technology, and it's just going to take from everything. There's going to be more money creation with banks being able to lend against Bitcoin. There's literally going to be money digitally created out of thin air to buy more Bitcoin. Like a lot of capital creation is going to happen to actually buy Bitcoin. It's getting out of hand. How much of a value proposition Bitcoin is compared to everything else.
It really
Yeah.
is, and I think that the one thing that I was thinking about the other day, because if you just keep going along the lines of like, okay, AI is getting better, things are getting cheaper, Bitcoin is going to be the best place to store your value versus like an Nvidia versus Apple. So you store it there for a while, but where it's going to get really interesting here is I was kind of thinking through a scenario here where, because everything's so cheap to produce now in terms of the technology that we have with AI. Like Jeff Booth says, how much does it cost to write a line of code, and then a million lines of code? So you're going to start to see companies where they create this technology. It's doing services for people online, like the AI vending machines, essentially, where you can pay different AIs to do different tasks for you. And so somebody starts creating these AI bots that can help make your day better, help you with your work. And they're obviously going to take Bitcoin because they're not going to start, deciding who's in what country. But the nice thing about that is too, like if you just put yourself in that position and say, okay, I know what I'm doing here. I'm going to make a bunch of AI bots, essentially, or tools that can help people. I'm going to charge them Bitcoin, and I'm just going to set up this anonymous Bitcoin wallet over here. And every time one of these AI agents gets paid, it's just going to flow into this completely anonymous Bitcoin wallet here. And it's like, how do you stop that? How do you compete against that? There's really nothing else that really compares to that right now. So it's just, again, it's a perfect storm of everything that's building up into, why should I have a bit of Bitcoin here? It just doesn't make any sense not to at this point.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it'll make less and less sense as we go on because the price is going to keep going up. There's going to be more and more people with exposure, meaning there's more depth to the market, more liquidity, easier to sell whenever you want to. I'm assuming it'll get easier to transfer your Bitcoin. Let's say we have Lightning today, it'll just get better and better.
Yes.
It's not like it's going to get worse. So
yes,
yeah,
that's exciting. So I think we'll leave this one here, boys. So thanks for the inputs on this, everybody. If you're watching this, if you're enjoying these shows, we don't have a name. Yeah, we might never have a name. We're just three guys from Canada here who like talking about Bitcoin and playing out different scenarios in our amongst each other. So thanks for watching, and you can find all the information about our channels in the video or in the show notes below. So thanks, everybody.